So one of the biggest problems that I've seen across over 250 engagements with outbound orgs is that in most sequencing tools, there's this little placeholder for the rep to follow, which says add personalization here. But the reality is that most reps simply just delete the line and send a templated email. One, because it requires some context switching. Two, it's a bit of effort. And three, the easiest thing to do is just fire off this prospect into a sequence. So, as I mentioned, I've seen this in pretty much every engagement, and I do understand why. But what ends up happening is emails go out as part of a sequence and they're generic and they just don't get replies. We're seeing reply rates are dropping across the board from a cold email point of view. And yes, there's a deliverability conversation to be had there, but also the relevance of the message is important. A recent workaround has been reps will turn to AI like ChatGPT or Claude and say, write me an email. But they're not giving the right context to the AI in order to create a great email. So what I mean by context here is that they're not giving the details about the ideal client profile and personas, as well as the pain points that their solution solves. They're not adding in any social proof. There's not really any prospect research or signal requirements added in. And lastly, they're not adding in the frameworks to work within to create an email, such as the company tone of voice and also rules for email too. So if you just let AI go off and create an email and it doesn't have any guardrails, you get random results. And we've seen that time and time again that these AI generated emails are terrible. So this insight led me to this, where there's a real big difference between personalization and relevance. Mentioning someone's university or their hobbies shows effort, but says nothing about whether you can help. And this is the trap that a lot of BDRs and SDRs fall into. But what gets replies in 2026 and beyond, and I believe will always be the case, is making sure that your email has situational relevance. So that answers, why does this message matter to me right now as a prospect? So in the rest of this talk, I'm going to walk through a prompt that I've built, which forces AI to research the prospect and then write an email based on exactly what matters to the prospect, to that person. It has the email frameworks loaded in. And in this example, I've just got 2 email frameworks, but of course you can put an unlimited amount of frameworks in your prompt. One for when a signal is found and one for when a signal doesn't exist or there wasn't one that surfaced through the AI research. So I'm going to share my screen shortly. For now, I just want to walk through what the prompt looks like. I'm going to explain it a little bit, and then we'll run it through a live example. So the prompt here is, this is for Claude Co-work. It can work in ChatGPT. You might have to tweak it slightly. But here's what the prompt starts with. So you're a cold email writer. Your job is to take a prospect's URL, research them, and then write one cold email that is relevant to their current situation. Now, this is a really important step before you take this and paste it into any AI. You need to give it your context. So you need to give it your company name, your website, a description about what you sell. And then also you need to give detailed information about your ideal client profiles and the target personas, keeping in mind that there may be multiple personas that your reps will be reaching out to. I've got an example of this filled out, which I'll share in just a second. But when we've got the ICP, we're talking about the industry, the company size, the stage, and any other criteria which is specific to you and your organization and what the product that you sell. From a persona point of view, we're looking at the titles, and then we want to add in 3 pain points, ideally 3 specific pain points that connects with what you sell, and that if a prospect was to receive this pain point in an email, they'd be nodding their head along to it. So what the prompt is going to go off and do is, first of all, it's going to research the prospect. You're just going to give it a LinkedIn URL, which is why we're using Co-work. So Claude can access the desktop and view the LinkedIn profile. It's going to search for their name and their company. It's going to search, and once it has that company name, it's going to go off and look for context. So who they are, what their company does, what stage they're at. And then signals is looking for any change that suggests that they are entering a window where your product becomes more relevant. And that includes things like hiring in relevant departments, recent role changes, funding rounds, company growth, content activity around specific topics, the classic signals that you have probably already know about. it's giving an important classification, which is not, these are not signals. We don't want to mention what university they went to. We don't want to mention the hobbies, a sports team, or restaurants in their cities. That's kind of fake personalization, which the majority of prospects see right through now. So once it's done that research, it's then going to look at your own website because you're giving it this context. And it's going to look for any case studies, social proof, testimonials that you have on your site. And it's going to pick the proof point, which is most relevant to the prospect. So looking at a company in a similar industry, a similar size, a similar challenge, or even a business model. If there isn't one that matches, which there won't be in every case, it's going to use the strongest result available. And then it's going to write the email. So remember, I mentioned there's two emails, two frameworks here, one with a signal, one without. So if it does find a signal, so recent news that it can use that relates to your product or service, it's going to start the email with hi first name and then talk about the signal in the first line. So it's going to mention what the consequence of that signal is. That's the second line. So what has actually changed in the world? What does it really mean to them that this event has happened? And what pressure or inherited problem or gap did that particular signal create? Then it's going to bridge. It's going to connect that pain that we've mentioned and we've given in the context to the solution, the outcome that you deliver, backed by the social proof that you found. And then it's going to end off with a soft call to action. What this means is that it's really asking for interest and relevant, and which is relevant to their situation. We're not asking for meeting. Asking for meetings in the first email is like asking for marriage on the first date. It just simply doesn't work, or it may work in tiny percentage of scenarios. The second framework, and it's only going to spit out one or the other, but the second framework is pretty much the same as before. It's got the pain, the bridge, the ask. It just doesn't have the signal line of personalization. And then these are really important. These are the rules. So for every email, keep it under 75 words, subject line 1 to 4 words, lowercase. These are best practices that I recommend across all client engagements. And from what I'm seeing is working in cold email now. And then what it's going to do is give an output. It's going to give you the email. It's going to tell you which framework it used and the signal. So your rep has the context and the confidence to use that email. So let me just quickly show you what an example of this looks like. And this is a level of detail I encourage you to use. Clarion is a completely fictional company that I've made up. I use it in lots of different examples. It's a customer onboarding software. So it has the website, what we sell, and then it's got the ideal client profile. So this one here is just one of the ICP segments. There are multiple segments, but we're just focusing on writing outbound to this ICP, which is the scaling B2B SaaS. 200, 500 employees, typically Series B, Series C. They use Salesforce CRM. So we've got the rich context here. And then for the target personas, we have the different personas, different job titles within each persona, and then the top 3 pain points. And when I work and like to put together my pain points for prospects I'm reaching out to, I try and think about the language they'd use to describe the problems that they're facing. So you'll often see that there's some quotes in here. I can't get a clear picture of onboarding effectiveness. Our data is scattered across 3 tools and every manager runs it differently. These are the conversations that the prospects would be having internally or when they're venting to a friend over a glass of wine or a beer in the pub. So this is an example of what this looks like, the prompt looks like once you've filled in your context. So I'm going to switch over to Claude Cowork and paste this prompt in to show you how it works. So now I've got Claude open, I've got Cowork selected, and I'm going to paste in the prompt. The prompt is going to run in the background. It's going to take a little while for Claude to digest the prompt because it was quite long. And remember, it has my context in there as well. While that's running, I'm just going to get a LinkedIn URL of a prospect that we're going to run through. In this scenario, I'm a BDR. I've got a book of business, and I found that this account is somebody that I want to reach out to, and I've identified that Kaylin is the right prospect as she is head of customer success, and that is the person I want to reach out to. So you can see that Claude has asked me to put in the LinkedIn URL. I'm going to paste that in. And what's happening in the background, which you won't be able to see in this video, is that Claude has opened my Chrome and it's opened a new tab and it will start to look at the LinkedIn profile for Kaylin. If you're using Claude chat without co-work, it won't have access to LinkedIn, as LinkedIn is quite a closed ecosystem and it doesn't really allow it to be scraped or bots to go through the website. But in the background now, it's looking at Kaylin's profile. It's going to be looking for her job title, anything that she mentions about herself in her own experience. It will look at her career history. And I will pause now and we'll come back once it's found the results. Okay, so this took a couple of minutes to produce, but it went and researched the prospect on LinkedIn. You can see here that it's got a screenshot of what it looked at in the browser. It searched for signals and news externally. It then found social proof on Clarion's website, and then it wrote the cold email. And this is what the cold email looks like. We've got a subject line, which is onboarding at scale. And it said the email starts with, "Hey, Kaylin, going from 2,000 to 4,500 organizations in a couple of years usually means the onboarding process that worked early on starts cracking. Playbooks get followed differently, visibility into which accounts are stuck gets harder, and adding headcount just to keep pace isn't sustainable. Shield Lane, which is a social proof, this is on the Clarion's website, hit the same wall and used Clarion to onboard 3 times the volume without growing the team. Worth a look, or is onboarding already in a good place at Ludus?" So we can see here that it used the signal pane bridge ask framework, and it found a clear growth signal, customer base more than doubling from 2,000 to 4.5K, 12 million in funding, which we didn't need to mention that in the actual message. And then the signal here, because they've doubled its customer base and is actively hiring across CS marketing and support, it related that to the social proof that Shield Lane also went through a similar experience and they onboarded 3 times the volume without adding the headcount. So that's how the email works. And simply you could speak to Claude here and say, change the call to action, use a different pain point, or you could simply add in another LinkedIn profile that you want to prospect to. And all a rep would need to do in this particular workflow would be just copy this and paste it into their email sending tool and click send. So a couple of things that I learn in building this out for myself and my clients is that oftentimes the good here is that the emails consistently sound like a person wrote them, as it's pulling through that relevant signals or falls back on the problem specific email. Because I have the rules in the prompt of to speak in a professional but slightly informal way, it does that consistently time and time again. Where it doesn't work, or some of the bad here, is that if you don't give the prompt enough context, the output will be really vague and the message will sound like it's written by AI. And that's something that you, of course, want to avoid. And what makes this more challenging, so I'd say the ugly part of this, is that LinkedIn data can be patchy. Some people don't have full profiles, or they have a skeleton profile that literally just lists their job title and when they started with no context about them. And then some people also, when using prompts like this, will skip that setup of giving it the ideal client profile, the persona information, and those real pain points. A lot of organizations have a real challenge actually articulating those pain points per persona, per ICP. But if you skip that process, this prompt just won't work. So if you wanted to test this yourself, implement it, here are some things that you could potentially change and look into. First of all, make sure that you have that relevant social proof ready. If it's not on your website, you can provide it as context into the prompt. Make sure that you've mapped out your different ideal client profiles with the different personas within each ICP segment and the pain points for each persona. That upfront work just makes the prompt so much more powerful and more useful. Test it on 10 different prospects. Try and find prospects that have signals, that don't have signals, and then compare the reply rates. If you're sending these messages out, see if these get more replies than your standard emails, which I'm pretty confident that they will. And this works in Claude or ChatGPT, so you can actually turn this into a skill if you wanted to. And once fine-tuned, that's when you save it into a skill, potentially roll it out to the wider team, and almost you can add it into the workflow of your reps as well. So I'd say one clear takeaway from this is that the quality of AI written outreach is decided before you even open the AI tool. Get your inputs right, who you help, what pain you solve for each persona, and the proof that you've done it before, and then the output follows. The prompt is in the workflow pack, so you can just paste it in and go.